Okay, cool. So we are going to be recording our ID notes for forceps and needle holders. So we can see my paper is all set up here. I've got ID notes, instruments, forceps, and needle holders is going to be on the left-hand side of my paper. I've got my lines I've already folded over. And then I've got top right of my paper is going to be my name, date, and session. So ID notes, instruments, forceps, and needle holders, name, date, and session. So I'm going to go into Google Classroom and I'm going to grab those. So the first thing we're going to get started is going to be components of surgical instruments. So I'm going to write components of surgical instruments on the left-hand side of my paper. So I'm going to go for it. Boom. All right. So components of surgical instruments is going to go on the left-hand side. Now I'm just going to set my pen up and be ready because I'm going to draw something on my right-hand side. So go back to my notes. So components of surgical instruments, I'm going to flip it. We have the components here. So I want to make sure I draw this in my notes because it's going to be very important for me to remember. So in my notes, I'm going to walk through how we're going to draw this image right here. My basic shape is an X, so I'm just going to start with that. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an X on my paper. Once I draw that X, I'm going to make my handles next. So I'm just going to start from the bottom and I'm going to make a half circle and then I make another half circle. And so there are my handles. I've also got these things called ratchets. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line, boop, and another line, boop. And then I'm going to actually draw itty bitty little lines coming off of that. So that will be like my ratchet, okay? So that's the little ratchet part. From there, I have my box lock. So my box lock, I'm going to make just a different color, and I'm actually going to draw like a rectangle, okay? So I'm going to take it and draw a rectangle, thump, and then fill in my rectangle. And then I'm going to make another little rectangle right here, boom. And this is my box lock. Now, the two most important pieces on your components is going to be the jaw and the tip. So the jaw and the tip are going to be the two ways that we are actually able to identify these various instruments. So I'm going to make sure that I've got that highlighted in here. So we've got the jaw is right there. And then the tip is that other pointing thing. So those are the two ways that I'm going to make sure I remember these instruments. I'm going to draw that down, highlight it, and make sure it's all good. All right. So with this, I'm going to look at the screen and we're going to see Miss Leslie. We should be able to see the video portion, right? So we have our instrument right here. I've got a ratchet, and if I listen, I can hear that noise. And what's happening is that I'm actually clicking. You can see those little lines, and there's teeth. See if you can see that. So see, there's teeth together. So to get that apart, I push my fingers together, but I have to like push and pull at the same time. So you're going to see I hold with my middle finger inside, my thumbs in the other, my index fingers helping me support and take control of this. So when I'm opening and closing, I close together, right? Now, if I'm on tissue, I can just hang it and it's still closed. Now, when I undo, I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to push my thumb away. So you can see these opposing lines. I need to get this piece here and I need to get the other piece to the other side to unlock it. Whenever I'm working with these instruments, I always want to unlock them properly when I'm practicing in class. And then whenever we're using these instruments, when they're not in use, we keep them unlocked. That way we don't break their hinge at all in their box lock. So whenever we're not using them when we're packing surgical packs, we always leave them undone. And now, so that's your ratchet. Here's your box lock. If I look inside of my box lock, I can kind of see a little box and an opening here, okay? So the cool thing is like I have no idea how they manufacture this, right? Like they have two different shapes coming out of here. If this were scissors, it almost looks like one's inside of the other, right? Which is impossible because of the varying tip sizes on that. But with your box lock, when you are cleaning and scrubbing these, you need to make sure that you are scrubbing on the inside because blood, debris, material can get into those box locks. And oftentimes people forget about those. All right. And then we have the jaws. In this case, here's our jaw and then the tip of it right there. So that's our components of our instruments. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the very first type of forceps. So our first forcep we're going to look at is an alligator forcep. So an alligator forcep is going to look like this. So here's our alligator forcep, and it looks like an alligator. While we're doing these, you definitely want to be drawing them. So an alligator forcep is going to remove foreign bodies. If you were one of those people that would shove things up your nose, or a little one likes to put things up your nose, this is something we could use to pry that out. All right, and so I still have my box lock right here, and then I've got that tip of the instrument, and then I have the jaw. So this is that section up there for it, okay? So they're removing foreign bodies. And then we've got our picture. So I really want us to focus in again in your notes. You should have removing foreign bodies, and then you should also have an image of that. So go ahead and pause the video, draw your picture. And then the next tool is our forcep, our Alice tissue forceps. So Alice, when I'm writing this, I'm going to pay close attention to that double L because for me, it makes me think of what they're going to do. So Alice tissue forceps are for grasping tough and dense tissue. So the double A, it's thick, right? So it makes me think about it's going to be grasping thick tissue. Then if I look at the actual instrument as well, so I can see that this is fairly thick inside and it's got some teeth. All right, so grasping tough, dense tissue. So here's that tip I'm going to pay very close attention to. I've got teeth, all right, so it's going to kind of chomp, chomp, and then I have metal all around here. Okay, so this is all a solid piece with your teeth. So I can grasp things like my cheeks, right? I'm not going to hurt myself if I grasp it. I'm not going to hurt the tissue. So we are using this on dense tissue that is nice and thick that I'm not going to hurt with. Because if I use this, right, on tissue, whoop, my tissue is going to move, but it's pretty thick. It's got this. I'm not gonna break it. Okay, so that's there. And again, pause, draw your picture. Next, we have Babcock tissue forceps. It's kind of like the cousin, all right? So they look very similar, but when I think of Babcock, I don't know if you guys have ever seen an old 1990s TV show called The Nanny, but there's a character named Miss Babcock, and she is a well-to-do lady. So when I think of Babcock tissue forceps, I think of very delicate things. So the Babcock are used for grasping delicate tissue, such as intestines. So if I'm going to use this to grasp something, I notice that there's a hole right here. So this hole, if I'm grasping tissue, the meat of that tissue is going to go through the hole, so I don't need to worry about rupturing or perforating. When we talk about perforating something, if perforation is little holes within it. So your paper, right, when you have notebooks, you have that dotted edge, that's a perforated edge. So these instrument or this forcep is flat on the top. Okay, and then it's got that opening. So again, delicate, Babcock. I may also think of the O's, the C, the O, and have that opening. Okay, so that may help me remember that. So here is that piece. So you definitely want to draw that portion. Now, they may be varying lengths and sizes, so I can't necessarily say the height, but I can look at that tip and that jaw to let me know exactly what it is. So pause here, draw your photo. Next, I have the forceps, the Brown Atson thumb forceps. Now, the cool thing here is that I see the word thumb, so what am I going to use to grasp it? I'm going to use my thumb, right? So your thumb then is going to be used for that. This looks like what? Tweezers. They're still technically forceps. Now with this, every time I close it, and then I go to open, like I let go of it, and then what happens? Well, it opens up. So this type of forcep is going to be used for moving and manipulating tissue. So this is going to act as almost my fingertips. So if I need something moved, I'm going to be able to move it, such as the little video. All right. So this is going to be something I'm going to move, manipulate, and then I'm going to take my other hand and work with it. Left-handed doesn't matter, right? These tools don't care for the most part if you're left or right-handed. So I'm going to hold and manipulate. Something you're also going to notice are the teeth on these. So if I look here, I can see my tooth. It looks like a whole bunch of teeth, and there's also a little groove on the inside of that. All right, so I'm going to make sure I pay close attention to that structure right there, because that is how I'm able to tell the difference of these different types of forceps that you're going to learn about. Next, we have our Cryol. So I was saying Cryol earlier. It's not. It's Cryol. So think file, or yeah. So cryogenics, right? So it's Cryol. So Cryol forceps, they are going to be for clamping blood vessels before we cauterize them. Cauterization is a burning method that we are able to use where it deadens your cells. We can use these in other types of ways that we're going to remove or cut off tissue. Yeah, so not just cauterization, but generally clamping those blood vessels before we cauterize. So these are Cryol forceps. Now these can come in. They can come in straight or they can come in curved. We have a pair of curved right here, right? But it doesn't matter. The thing that I really want to remember and think about with these is that I have those teeth through the whole length of the jaw, all the way up until that box lock, right? So here's that box lock, and there's all those teeth. I also used to think, so I would say it wrong, but it would make me think of the critters that whales eat, right? So I think of the krill. So I always just think of all their little legs swimming around, but these are the Cryol forceps. So the teeth from the tip of the jaw, from the tip all the way down to the box lock, you've got all of those horizontal lines, and they are pretty thick, okay? So they're thick, they've got some heft to them. Next is its cousin, so don't be confused with Kelly. All right, so then we have Kelly forceps. So Kelly, I'm going to look at like the smoothness of the Y. I'm going to look at the L's. These are clamps, again, that are going to hold medium-sized vessels and small tissue masses. So we have Kelly forceps. All right, so Kelly tissue forceps. This is a straight version. Again, I'm a little bit thicker or wide at the tip. And these here we have flatness happening. So this is where, like, I think of that Y as something different, right? Something's happened on top and then it's just nice and smooth on the bottom. We have all those teeth and then we have a flatness right there. So I think there you go. You can see that pretty well. So we have all those teeth. So about 2/3 of the jaw is serrated, right? It's got those teeth edges. And then the last third up to the box lock is all smooth. Next, we have Halsted mosquito hemostatic forceps. So I want us to think about and break down these words. Where we have mosquito, so we're going to think of the mosquito, which is small, light, sharp, pointy, and then hemostatic. So hemo actually, or heme, means blood, and static, what do we think of when we hear the word static? We think of something that is stable or not moving. It's not changing. So with the Halsted mosquito hemostatic forceps, these are going to be to clamp small blood vessels or skin bleeders. So they're nice and light because I don't want to damage those blood vessels that I'm going to be attaching them to. And so we can definitely see that it's a sharp, narrow point. So nice and narrow for those. Very lightweight. All right. And then on the inside, we have just serrated teeth. So we don't want to confuse these with the krill, but we can see how much more narrow these are. Okay, so regardless of if it's curved or not, this is my Cryol right here, and this is the mosquito. So we can see the point on those is a little bit more well-defined in the mosquito, and then just even that thickness. It's a little bit easier to see that difference in person, but the mosquito, we also have the handle is nice and delicate, close together, and a little bit longer, where we have a little bit more density to the Cryol. So those are our mosquito hemostats. Any hemostat, when you see on TV, they're referring to an instrument that is going to stop the blood flow. Next, we have our forceps, our Rattooth thumb. So again, if I see thumb, then I know it's going to look similar to my tweezers. So I'm going to actually hold it with my thumb. These again are still going to be moving things, yeah? So I'm just going to move these things out of my way. So small, delicate tissue, I can grab with these. They look like rat teeth. So if you can see that, I've got two and then I have one in the center. So that are my rat tooth forceps. Okay, so just a nice little delicate movement. And these are very much dealer's choice. Yeah. So the veterinarian is going to decide what tools they want to use and what they prefer. So some might want an Adson thumb, some might want the rat tooth thumb. It's really doctor's choice with that. Next, we're going to get into the needle holder. So we have the Mayo Haggar needle holder, or a Haggar. So just say that AR, Mrs. Ritter and I was looking it up. So Mayo Haggar needle holder is going to do that, just that. It's going to hold onto our suture needles. All right, so it holds our needles. Because it's holding the metal, metal in metal is not very easy to hold. So if you take a look at these, you have a nice groove on the inside of it. So all of our needle holders are going to have a little divot on the inside of them. And that's going to let us know that we can actually kind of set that curvature of the needle can set in there fairly nicely. Okay. So it gives us that little piece to kind of grasp that metal. So that is our Mayo Haggar needle holder. And the last one we have is an Olsen Haggar needle. So when I see Olsen, what some of us may think about are the Olsen twins. And if I can remember the Olsen twins, there's two of them. So that means an Olsen Haggar needle holder is going to have two things attached to it. So I have my needle holder on the top part, then I also have my scissors as well. So this is kind of cool if I only want one tool, right, when I'm doing sutures. Now the problem though is that if I'm holding my suture or my needle, boom, 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 and I go to grab my needle, but I might accidentally then cut it. So that is, again, some doctors may have just the Mayo Haggar needle holder and some scissors, or they may have the Olsen Haggar needle holder because it's got both the scissors and the needle holder in there. And so there you've got your blade. This one also looks more like scissors. Yeah. So I don't have that box lock on it because I want to be able, if need be, I want to be able to sharpen my scissor blades. So that's why I'm able to remove this from this joint if need be, because then I can sharpen these blades if ever there was a need to arise. So that's why you've got your scissors that can disconnect. And that is our instruments.